So much about the
What would you say if I turned into all the things you love to hate? And on my way comes crashing through the rotten beams and window panes.
Hey everybody, what is going on? Welcome back to episode 9. Can you believe it? We made it this far. 9 whole episodes. PC gaming. We're going to go over PC gaming. Does anybody still do that? I know there's a lot of people with pitchforks coming after me after that comment. Of course we are. We only do desktop. We don't do laptops, right? And the next generation launches this week. Yes, very, very exciting. This only comes along every so often. So, yes, we got that this week. And you know that that's going to be an absolute shit show because it always is. And we're also going to talk about games and movies and TV shows. What can you let your kids watch nowadays when games are so realistic and there's so many things out there to keep an eye on? It's so difficult to control what our kids watch. And I'm going to talk to somebody that's sitting next to me here. We have my neighbor, Eddie. Eddie has been gracious enough to sit with me and talk to me, and now I don't have to talk to the wall when I'm recording. So thank you, Eddie. Cheers. Cheers. Happy election day 3. Week. Yeah, no kidding.
Thanks for having me.
And for you at home, wondering what I'm drinking, yes, I am drinking beer again. We are doing that. We're not doing the review today, but probably next episode I'm going to start doing that again. Well, Eddie, the reason why I have you on here, other than I really like you a lot, in a platonic way, is because you're a tech guy. You're a computer guy.
Sure.
You build them, you sell them, you work on them, whatever.
Allegedly.
Right? And I always liked PC gaming. There for a long time I did it, and I did it not knowing anything about PCs, going into Circuit City saying, does this play all the new games? And the guy going, absolutely. And absolutely being only 40% right.
Yeah.
So I kind of wanted to talk about like what kind of hardware we need to look at if you were going to decide to start PC gaming. And I also, after that, I want to talk about how different is PC gaming really to console gaming, especially with this new generation coming up, because I really don't think it's that different. It's pretty close.
Yeah, I'd say it's pretty close.
So
We'll get there.
let's talk about if I'm going out and I want to play at least the new games. What am I looking at here?
Nowadays, in order to have like a decent experience, budget wise, you're probably looking at the lower end, maybe $600. COVID has retail stuff kind of all messed up, but under normal circumstances, that's kind of your starting point. Whether you go Intel or AMD, you're looking at at least 4-core, 8-thread CPU.
Is there a difference in price between one or the other?
They're pretty competitive now. Yeah. For a long time, like say the last 10 years, Intel was really controlling the market.
Now I remember, because we talked about this before.
Yeah.
And I remember back in the day, AMD not being bad, but I think it was more of a compatibility issue.
Sure.
Intel was pretty much spot on, but and that's really changed over the years, hasn't it?
Yeah. When I started building my own stuff, would have been like 2006, and that's when AMD Athlon single-core CPUs were kind of beating the pants off of the Pentium 4 at the time. And then AMD was actually kind of first to the game with the X2 series CPUs, dual-core CPUs. I think I had a 3800 X2, which was one of the lower-end ones because, I didn't have the money at the time. But anyways, that was like the last moment where AMD kind of had Intel by the balls, and then Core 2 came out, and then Intel just started jumping ahead after that. And then around like 2012, Sandy Bridge, second gen, Intel i-Series, i3, i5, i7 was like a quantum leap. And then it kind of left AMD in the dust. And the only thing AMD had going for it was, allegedly high core count, which kind of came out later, that some of their early really high core count CPUs were sort of not correctly advertised. They were like half of the cores as they claimed to be. But anyways, AMD touted core count and they were cheaper. And generally they'd probably work okay. But for like a little bit more money, Intel was like, say, twice the performance or maybe even more.
Right.
And it's kind of been that way until AMD came out with Ryzen, a couple of years ago. And then it really kind of forced Intel to start progressing, where Intel just kind of been sitting back and been making like very small iterative changes, like maybe 5 to 10% performance increase per generation. And then AMD came out with all of a sudden a very competitive line of Ryzen CPUs. And then ever since then, you've seen a ton of advancement from Intel. They already had the technology, but they had just been sitting there because there was no real competition. So nowadays you can kind of go either way. The market, I think, has kind of leveled out. Ryzen stuff is good. Intel stuff is good.
See, and that's great because, when I was still gaming, and when I finally started getting the knowledge, because my hardware wasn't lasting as long as I needed to, and finally I was like, okay, I got to figure out what am I looking at here when I go to buy these games. What do I need to play these games, and make sure that I can upgrade it,
Sure.
with the motherboard and everything.
Yep.
Not that I could build you one, but I could look on a box and tell you, yes, that's what I have, or no.
Sure.
And it did seem like back then Intel was running the game, and you were going to pay for it.
Yeah.
And they knew that, you could go AMD and have it be cheaper, and it'd be a great computer, but you ran the risk of, it having problems or whatever, and, maybe the drivers weren't necessarily compatible.
And especially back then, so you had, Intel and AMD on the CPU side, and at the time it was Radeon, ATI Radeon.
Oh, yeah.
And NVIDIA. And Intel and NVIDIA have always kind of been like the golden children. Like they've always had the top spot.
See, now I always had Radeon cards because the guy that ended up building some of my computers, he was a big Radeon guy.
Yeah, and ATI had really competitive stuff. ATI and NVIDIA had sort of the same relationship. And it's kind of funny that AMD ended up buying ATI, and AMD so that's all one kind of basket now. And they've always kind of had that like underdog position. And that's still the case today. NVIDIA has the top of the market, and they've had it pretty much nonstop, other than just recently the 6900 that they just released. It looks like that might be pretty competitive with the top of the line NVIDIA stuff. But it's always been, ATI, now AMD graphics, and AMD CPU side have always kind of been backseat, but it seems like nowadays it's, pretty competitive. And obviously your consoles, have a lot of AMD hardware in them.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. And that's huge.
Yeah.
You want to talk about, nailing it down with that, how much money they're probably making off of that, just that alone.
Yeah, and that's the thing, like, we talk about Intel and NVIDIA having the top spot and being at the high end, but most people don't buy high end. Like, you look at all the gaming PCs that are out there and you compare that to consoles.
Right.
And the consoles are going to way outnumber the high end stuff.
What I always remembered is, so a game would be coming out, right? Mm-hmm. And it would have thousands of soldiers on each arm. It's epic. You're watching the trailer and you're like, dude, that's so great.
Sure.
And you find out they're probably running it like on like a $10,000 computer.
Yeah.
Something the average person's never going to be able to, afford.
Unrealistic.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. And that was kind of one of the reasons why I stopped.
Yeah. I think on the console side you have a much more consistent
and that's the thing, with how close they have become. I mean, look, they're computers now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
They are computers. I mean, that's all they are.
Yep.
And that's because that's kind of what I wanted to get into next about as far as everything's coming, I just, and I know, I thought that PC gaming was almost over right when I stopped, because I mean the amount of shelf space that you were seeing for PC games at like Best Buy or wherever was so small. And I think that might have been deceiving, just because a lot of that was just going digital, with Steam getting a little bit bigger at the time, which I hate Steam. I hate digital. If you've listened to any of my other episodes, I could probably name a couple that were like, I hate fucking digital. But yeah, I mean, and with PC gaming, like I was never into like console, like to where I'm gonna buy this game and that game. PC, I was just the type of game, because on PC you could do, like, I was into like real time strategy and like building stuff and stuff like that. And even today, I'm like huge into Minecraft. You know, but. And even with like first person shooters, because I'm so bad at playing first person shooters with a regular controller, but with a mouse and keyboard,
total different ballgame.
And you wouldn't think so, but it's just to aim it in my hand-eye coordination, and that's funny too, because I went away from playing consoles for so long. When I got back into it and I started collecting all my games, and I tried to play on a controller, my hand-eye coordination was horrible. Now, maybe that's because I got a little bit older, too, but it was just amazing. Like, games that I was so good at before, I just struggled to go through.
There's definitely been, like an evolution, PC gaming side as well, because, PC had, like, the first real online multiplayer experience before consoles had caught up, until, like, Xbox Live became a big thing. And I mean, like, personally, I went from like first gen OG Xbox to gaming PCs. And like the first couple systems I built, I still didn't know what I was doing generally. I mean, like, I broke some hardware and didn't pick the right parts, and like the retail market, especially then, but even still now, if you go in not knowing, what you're looking at, you could very easily spend a lot of money and not get a very good system.
And see, that's what I've started to think, that if I ever got into that, and if I had to do it over again, I would really, I would probably maybe not get a degree in it, but like at least go to school in some capacity and learn like how to build this stuff, because I mean, you really have to keep up on this stuff. I mean, just. And that's another thing. I'm just having flashbacks of how much this drives me nuts. But you buy a new game, and now you got to download update a driver for your video card. But now a game that you've been playing that's still installed on there ain't working quite right because it's a different driver. It's like, God damn it, dude. It's like, and it really, sometimes it's almost like, well, I guess I'm locked into this game until I decide to play a different one. And, and it's just.
A lot of that has improved. Windows OS has become much more user-friendly.
See, I was there with C prompt, and I was not good at C prompt at all. And then it was kind of like back then it was half the stuff was on DOS, but half the stuff was just becoming like window compatible. And I remember when I'd get a game and it would be Windows compatible, I'd be like, oh my God, thank you. It's so much easier installation. I don't have to remember like / whatever. And I know I've seen these guys on that are big computer guys, and it's like no big deal. They just type all that stuff in. It's like, I was not that guy.
If you do it regularly, it's,
But
to do it.
And just to configure it, I just remember. And that was right in the prime of me not knowing what I had on my computer. So it would come up and it'd be like a list of like sound cards, Sound Blaster Pro, Sound Blaster, Roland, whatever. And I'm like, I'll just go down the line and click on these and see which one works until, but I don't miss those days.
No, I miss some of that, but, in high school I took some computer courses and we did a bit of old stuff just because like the lessons were old at the time. So,
and I'll tell you, last year I kind of had a moment of nostalgia, and I dabbled with DOSBox because I'm like, oh man, I could play all these old games, whatever. And then I got into it and C prompt. I'm like, man, this is stupid. I'm like,
There has
"What?"
to be a better way.
I'm like, I didn't like this in the first place. Why am I doing it now? So I was like, yeah, delete it, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm like, maybe they'll do a remaster of this later on that's like compatible with, Windows 10 or whatever. But
Yeah.
it took me all of 10 seconds to be like, what am I doing here? I hate this. And I never could get it to run right. So yeah, no.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's so funny to now with where we're going with gaming, not just on the PC side, but on the console side. And I just wonder at what point is it going to be, are people that are still like avid PC gamers, are they going to be like, you know what? I mean, there's no difference.
Yeah,
So why bother? Because now I don't have to worry in a couple of years, updating my video card, or worrying that I'm gonna need enough RAM, or the game comes out and it's like, okay, oh man, I can only have the settings at minimum,
Right.
And
Yeah, so there's a lot that's changed. I'd say, previous gen, having different levels of performance, like say Xbox, variations that are, lower end and then higher end, giving you different resolution capability or FPS capability. Like, that's been part of the reason why people built PCs, because you could build a computer that worked for whatever budget you had, or for whatever setup you were looking, to complete, monitor setup, multi-monitor setup, etc. And then, the consoles are providing some of that flexibility now. If you don't have a lot of money to spend, you could buy whatever base system, and if you have the money to spend and want a little better performance, you can spend it and get it. And you have things like Xbox Game Pass, which is really like blurring the lines between consoles and PCs. You pay for a title once, you could play it on your PC if you have it, or play it on your Xbox. And then you've got game streaming, which is, again, like at some point probably going to make a lot of this moot if you can game stream on your phone or on like a little Fire Stick type device or whatever.
I got to tell you, I think that's further away than
I'd say it's far away too, but I'd say some games it's probably not. It depends on the game. Some of the games that can run well with a little bit of latency, you could probably be okay. But
that's going to be the big thing, because I think like fighter games, and
Yeah.
especially the fighter games, I think those are going to be the ones that really. I mean, well, we've already seen it,
Yeah. I would say I'm not looking forward to that happening, only because I think the hardware is part of the fun. And just like, you talk about big box games and stuff going digital, that's like the ultimate leap, is that you won't have anything. You won't even have a system to run it on.
I hate that too,
Yeah,
I just, and I know I'm beating a dead horse here, and I mentioned it countless times already, but it just doesn't feel like you own it. And then you get the guys that are like, well, when you had the physical copy, technically you don't own that game. It's like, okay, Jack. Yeah, what I mean is, I want to be able to put it in. I don't want to worry that in 10 years from now, they're going to stop supporting it on whatever servers, turn that off. And guess what? That $50 game or whatever you spent back in the day, it's gone.
Yeah, and that happens, frequently. And that's not really an issue if you go far back enough where systems weren't reliant on, like, corporate game servers to run off of. Like, stuff was peer-to-peer, or you could host your own server. And that was another thing on the PC side that you could do. Multiplayer-wise, you could host your own server. Minecraft, obviously, is like... And plenty of games before that where you could control a lot of that. And also you have the modding aspect, and like tons of great stuff has come out of games through modding. So there's some stuff that you won't, you may not ever get on a console unless you have, Sony or Microsoft open the doors, but they've only ever closed the doors tighter, even since like first gen Xbox or whatever. So
yeah, I gotta think that, Sony and Microsoft and probably even Nintendo are just licking their chops at getting to all digital, because these guys, it's not going to cost anything to produce anything. And shit, I lost my train of thought.
Yeah, more money in the bank.
It's more
Less
money in
work.
the bank. And you know what? They very rarely they sell them at retail, as though you were buying one out of the store, physical copy. And I hate that. And see, that's what, someone, I heard someone bring this up, and I mentioned it before about, these systems coming out, and I guess it would mainly Xbox, that S, that's going to be all digital, and, how much cheaper it is, and you're going to save money. But really, you're not going to save all that much money because the secondary market, there is going to be none.
Right.
So you're not going to be able to go into a brick and mortar store or go on eBay and buy a used game for, 50% of what you would buy new. No, you're going to the e-store or whatever store they have, their online store, and you're going to pay for it. And also, too, another thing, too, is if you're going to be going all digital, they're going to make you pay out the ass for memory. And we already seen that with the expanded memory cards,
the proprietary stuff
for
Seagate.
Xbox, and it's like already $200 some.
I think
Which is crazy.
The PlayStation seems to be a little easier to add third-party memory, but harder to actually install it. Not that it's difficult to install, but you have to crack the system open.
Now answer me something, because this brings up a question that I had, because I heard this on another podcast that I listened to, that with these new systems with solid-state drives, you can't necessarily hook up like a external hard drive and have it work. There's something different than...
Yeah, so the big thing with like a NVMe or better technology in the solid-state format is the speed, right? So to say that you couldn't might be like a limitation of the system not being capable. Like that storage may be available in an external form, but whatever interface they're using, USB 3.1 or whatever it is, may not be fast enough on that system.
Or maybe they're just doing it so you'll buy it at
Absolutely.
$200.
I mean, yeah, Microsoft is very much like, if you want it, here it is, and it's 200 and whatever. Whereas PlayStation is like, well, it just takes standard NVMe solid state drives, so you could buy that, from anywhere, and there's plenty of competition there. And like, I'm not sure exactly what was it, a 2 terabyte that Seagate Microsoft deal, that extra
the extra one?
Yeah. I'm not sure if it's coming in different sizes. But
I thought it was another terabyte, but maybe it's 2.
No, it makes more sense that you say it's 1, because when I saw it, the pricing was north of $200 for 1 terabyte NVMe. The format's slightly different or whatever, but it's the same stuff. That's like roughly double, and at a standard NVMe drive.
Okay.
So like if you're talking about 1 terabyte versus 1 terabyte, the PlayStation might be nearly half the price to add the same amount of storage, the same performance, the same chips, basically, as the Xbox. So
I don't know that I've heard anything from PlayStation 5 about like any expandable memory as far as like a card or plug-in or anything.
I saw the teardown. I don't know if it's a lead engineer, but someone official. And he basically, broke the system open, and it wasn't super difficult to get to it. And there's just an empty bay, and you just literally
like an auxiliary bay.
Yeah, a little NVMe, tiny little slot, and you just take the NVMe drive, which is like a little bit bigger than a stick of gum, and you stick it in and place it, into the slot, and you put one screw in, and that's it. So the only downside to that is that it's perhaps not removable easily, like a Microsoft version is, but I'm not sure how often you'd be removing it.
Yeah, I don't.
It's kind of a weird use case. So,
and I don't have much experience with the newer consoles yet, and so this is going to be definitely a learning experience. I don't know how fast that memory is going to go. I know. I don't know if you're familiar with Metal Jesus Rocks. He's a
yep.
And he got here. Microsoft sent him a Xbox Series X already, and
Nice.
I just watched the video yesterday. And now to be fair, he's giving it a full run through. He's playing, the old OG Xbox 360, the Xbox One, and the new games. So, as much as he was using it at that time, the average Joe's probably not going to use it, but he filled up the memory already. And he said, he's like, hey, I don't know what this means. I have been using it more than I probably will on average, but he's like, it's full. So if you think you're going to like upload like 30 games or whatever, you're wrong. And that's not even digital.
Yeah.
So man, it just, I just can't stop wondering like how digital's going to go, because I don't think digital's really going to take off until you see the price of the memory drop way below what the size of these games are.
yeah.
And I don't know, because these games get so much
Huge.
bigger so fast,
Huge.
and I don't think the memory is getting that much cheaper,
Yeah.
or at least enough ahead of it
Yeah.
to really, to
Yeah.
say digital is going to be the way to go.
Yeah, so I think you're definitely overall going to be paying more, and perhaps the benefit that you're getting is that super fast storage. Almost no load times. Very few, if any, load screens. Like, it's just going to be super snappy all the time. Like,
Oh man, have you seen those comparisons to even the Xbox One, to the
Yeah.
X series? Man, Xbox One. Okay, I got that right, and then I got to go Xbox Series X. The names, they're so horrible.
we just need numbers. Just
This numbers,
like
right?
12, 13, 14,
Right.
whatever. Just keep.
Well, anyway, I mean, the load times are crazy.
Yeah.
And, and I talked about before on the podcast about when you fixed my computer.
Sure.
Right before my son broke it again.
Yeah, I listened
But
to that.
you put the solid state drive in, and like, dude, how fast it was. And I remember, I think I got a hold of you right at the first time I booted up. I'm like, dude, this is great.
Yeah.
This is so fast.
And that was like a standard 2.5-inch disc. So, on average, that's like a 600 megabyte read, 400 or 500 megabyte write. NVMe is like 5, 6, 7, 8, like multitudes faster. So like I think you reach a point of diminishing returns, once you get that fast, because going from like a hard drive to the slowest SSD is a huge jump. And then from the slowest SSD to NVMe or whatever higher speed storage is like a jump, but not as big as the first jump
Okay.
was. Kind of like with anything, like, PC hardware, it was like from 1999 to like 2000 was a huge jump. And then 2001 was a huge jump. And then the jump got smaller and smaller and smaller to the point where like the last 12 years of Intel has been like 5% every year.
And that's interesting that you say that too, because and people have kind of been saying this, and that Metal Jesus mentioned it when he was reviewing the new Xbox, and he said, I don't know that if you already have the Xbox One, if you're really going to need to go out and get this.
Yeah.
Because, well, first of all, a lot of the games that are coming out are going to be on both.
Right.
The new games. And the fact that it's really not that jump that you got before. I mean, yeah, I played two of the same games, one with the Xbox One and one with the Series X. Yeah, there's a difference, but it's very, I don't want to say it's very small, but it's not as big as before. Because, when you went from like, Nintendo and then you went Super Nintendo, that was a big leap. And then Super Nintendo, and then they went into, the 3D stuff, and there was bigger leaps. But I think the further we go, the leaps are going to be smaller.
Yeah.
Or, well, we already see it. And I'm curious on, as far as console longevity, if that's going to mean these consoles are just going to be around long enough, because if they try and jump the gun too soon, people are going to be like, well, why even bother? And I think and I wonder if that's going to happen now.
There's a lot of parallels to gaming PC or PCs in general, along that train of thought, because you have, if you look at like Steam hardware surveys, you can see what the most common graphics card is or whatever. And generally it's like junk, right? Like, not to offend anyone, but it's generally a very slow graphics card. Maybe internal graphics is like probably the number one most used graphics, which is basically unable to play any game. And then the most common mainstream graphics card is maybe like $100 graphics card, like a 1050 Ti or whatever newer version of that. And you have, that same type of situation where you have a huge user base, customer base that has generally a particular average setup of hardware. And you want to appeal to them, game devs want to appeal to the most common customer, most common hardware, and they're going to build for that. Like, you're obviously going to have, people who spend more money. on the console side or PC hardware side, but most people are not. And is there enough for those people that are spending more to make it worth building your game around that, or do you have to build a game that the most people can use? And if most of the people are on previous gen hardware and haven't made that jump, like that's going to be a reality probably for a little while.
And see, that's something that's been brought up quite a bit now, is people talking about the fact that Microsoft and Sony are going to have these new games that are coming out on their new consoles are also going to be on their previous console.
Right.
A lot of people are like saying, so how does that affect the newer game on the newer console?
Yeah.
Because are they going to have to develop, kind of towards that old one,
Right.
And
As
take
the
away,
base,
take away from what might have been better on the newer console. Not to say that it's not going to be better, but when you're trying, they're not going to develop two separate games, two separate versions. They're going to have to. It's going to take away, and that's already been a question.
It seems like a lot of it is based around resolution and FPS, which is actually like generally
Now, I'm sorry to say, but how important is FPS for even graphics? Because isn't that more of a function of like how it runs?
Yeah, so it depends on who you talk to and what they're doing. So like on the gaming side, forever and ever, it was 60 FPS was your goal. But that was mostly because monitors, like most mainstream monitors, not talking about CRTs, because they could go up. Once LCD became a thing, like early 2000s until very recently, that's been the goal, right? 60 FPS, that's what you're going to get, and it's going to be great, and it'll be smooth, and your eyes can only see 60 FPS, quote unquote, and everybody was happy with that. And then like 75 hertz, 100 hertz, 120 hertz monitors started coming out, and then everyone's like, oh, huge difference. And there is a big difference there. Like if you were to take your computer and hook up a high refresh rate monitor to it, not even gaming, just like surfing the web, just moving your cursor around on the screen, it's a different experience. So there's definitely something there, as far as the smoothness goes. But that's on the PC side. So, now you're talking like large format displays, TVs, which is a slightly different thing. Generally TVs have not exactly been parallel with computer monitors. TVs are generally cheaper to get.
And I got to believe that with as many TVs that are out there now to choose from, there's such a wide range of what you're going to get.
Yeah. So, and that's the thing. It's like you can, you compare the dollars between like a high-end gaming PC setup and a high-end console setup. It'd probably be closer than you think if you were to try to get like a similar level of performance, resolution, refresh rate, like on the same playing field. Because you're going to spend, to get like a 4K 120 hertz TV, you're going to spend a lot of money. More money than you would spend on an equivalent computer monitor. Like the computer monitor would generally be a little bit smaller, but you'd be sitting closer to it. Obviously, it's a different experience. But that's what I was getting at before, is you have that as the kind of the differentiator between your base system and your fancy system, right? Across brands. And that's kind of like the easiest thing to scale. Gaming PCs have always done that. You've always been able to go in, change your settings, but change your resolution is a big thing, right?
Yeah.
And
and for me, with my past computers, it would be like, oh, we're going to wind that back just a little bit more. Okay, all the way to the bottom.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Until you get it to run well. So that's, we talk about like, how does the market evolve with such a wide range of systems? I think that's going to be the big kind of variable, is just resolution and refresh rate, because that stuff is easy to change and you don't have to redesign a game to make that same game run well on the cheaper hardware and also look great on the expensive hardware.
Well, it's going to be interesting too, and I don't know how true this is, but now with supposedly 8K coming out, because these I'm barely in the 4K. I just have a 4K TV because that's
what you get now.
What I get now, right? And now they're saying, well, these new consoles are geared towards the 8K. But correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't they say that at a certain point the human eye can't.
Yeah.
Isn't. This is as good as you're
Yeah.
going to see.
Yeah, and I don't know the exact specifics, but they say, for example, like at 10 feet, you can't tell the difference between 1080p and 4K. Like whatever that, thing is, whatever people say. But it seems like that continually changes. Like I said, it used to be 60 FPS was the best, and you couldn't see any faster than that, so it didn't matter. And then when 120 became mainstream, everyone's like, oh, you have to have 120. Oh, you have to have 144. You have to have 240. Like whenever the new stuff comes out.
Which one's the one that makes me like motion sick? Because there's I think it's 4K. You walk into Best Buy and they got it on the end cap and it's crystal clear. But then it's got that fucking movement.
Yeah, there's some weird stuff that TVs do. There's some weird stuff that TVs do.
But it messes with me.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily make me like motion sick, but it's just like I don't like this. It feels it's almost too good.
Yeah, and I know there's some stuff that some TVs do to kind of enhance that experience. Certain brands have certain things they do with refreshing and like doubling frames and doing weird stuff. I know some people refer to like one of the effects is like the soap opera effect, where it's kind of like they double the frames to make it a higher refresh rate, but you're kind of getting a weird effect, like it seems unnatural. So there's definitely a huge variation on the TV side, and that's going to play a huge role in like the end product performance wise that you get out of any system, especially the fancier stuff.
Because I hear 8K and I'm just like, well, I couldn't care less at this point. I'm like, Jesus. I'm like, what do you and which is funny that I say that because I'm a real snob when it comes to my older consoles looking good, but they look like garbage on these new TVs because they were never made for them.
And like I was saying before, I think the law of diminishing returns is going to become even more and more relevant, because like from 4K to 8K, like from 1080p to 4K, there's a difference there. On a TV, you could probably tell if you're close enough. From 4K to 8K, unless you have like an 80-inch screen or something, like I don't see until those 8K TVs get to the point where 4K TVs are now, which will happen and probably sooner than we even think, because 1080p to 4K happened pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. To me, it doesn't make very much sense to go out and spend a ton of money if you can't really tell the difference, because especially when your hardware has to push that many pixels, from 1080p to 4K is a huge jump, multitude, and then from 4K to 8K again. So it's like you're going to spend many factors more money and maybe be able to see a difference, but probably not.
Well, now that we're talking about monitors or whatever, I'm gonna kind of change it here, and let's do a hypothetical here, Eddie. Mm-hmm. Let's say I was single. Okay, I'm not married. I'm a younger guy. Yeah. I'm not 42. I'm like 41.
Right.
And I want the ultimate rig. Mm-hmm. I get the ultimate computer, but I don't want one monitor. I want three.
Yeah.
My question is, if I had that setup with three monitors, how many women do you think I would get? How much play? Just because I had three monitors. Do you think that would be a closing deal for a lot of them?
Well, you probably wouldn't leave the house, so I don't know.
That's true.
You'd probably have a lot of online action.
That's true.
But if you were to leave, maybe it depends on how you advertise it. I'm not sure.
I don't know what my audience is, but there might be a couple guys out there going, "Yeah, I got two. I got three. I don't leave the house ever."
Yeah, you don't. Yeah,
they're going through mice like crazy. They're just sticking to everything now. Oh man! Thank God I'm married.
Yeah, keeping us.
And, back in the day, you had to wait for that shit to buffer. It was crazy. And dial-up, too. You were just like still pictures. Crazy.
Yeah, but you'd probably have a lot of boyfriends, I would say. Depending on the crowds you hang around with.
Because everybody at work, they all have, like last year, they all got these setups. And they're all like the curved monitors, and there's like three of them there. I'm like, what do you need three for? What are you guys doing? You're doing, spreadsheets here, and they got three monitors, like they're in NORAD here, waiting for the missiles to launch here. I'm just like, and they're just like, I don't know. The company thinks we need three.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, they got like the Lenovo sitting there that's like 3 years old, but it looks like it's like 50 because it's in an industrial place. So
Have you seen my work setup at home? You'd laugh at me.
no, is it like the Batcave?
I've got 3 screens lengthwise on the bottom, and 3 1080p, and then I have a 1440p 27 on the top, and then I have a laptop monitor, and then I have a second computer with a 27-inch 4K next to me. So I have 6 screens that I'm using, but a lot of it's still. I'm not gaming on that setup. That's just a work setup. But I needed to keep up.
I'm going to be honest with you. That's kind of what I figured you had, the setup like that. And because I tell Mel all the time, I said, you know, if the lights ever go out and the banks go down, I'm like, fucking Eddie, dude. I'm going over there and be like, where's my money? My ATM card's not working. And I'm like, I know you hacked into something. I'm like, he works from home. I mean, who works from home? This is pre-COVID too. I'm like, dude, never see that guy. He's always working from home down in the basement. I'm like, she doesn't work. I'm like, dude, he's totally doing something illegal over there.
Yeah, especially selling gaming computers. There's constantly like strange cars rolling up.
Well, that was the thing too, and it's funny because like the last place we lived to, and this has nothing to do with anything here, but the last place we lived, one of the houses across the street, there was a lot of people coming and going, and it was never the same people, I guess, and it was like, and I wasn't even thinking about it, and Mel's like, one day she's like, you know, they're probably selling drugs. I'm like, right, you know,
That
she's
makes
totally
sense.
more gangster than I am
Yeah.
because I wasn't even thinking about it, and you know, it was such a weird thing because well, he had gotten divorced and he was really odd. He always walked around with his shirt off and he had like this bad Darth Maul tattoo on his shoulder. I'm not even joking. I'm not even joking. I hope he's not listening.
Yeah.
You know, but
Hey, buddy.
But you know, and I never knew his wife's name because, and you know, excuse the language here, but you know, the only time I ever heard him talk to her is out the window when he was calling her a stupid bitch, and I'm like, I don't know her name. I just know her as a stupid bitch. Yeah, that didn't last. That didn't last too long. Well, then the best part was the neighbors next to them. They ended up getting divorced, and then her and him ended up hooking up, and it was just so
Yikes.
weird. It was so weird.
Yikes.
Don't miss. Sometimes I miss that place, but not because of them. But yeah. Anyway. All right, Eddie. Well, actually, before we really move on, I do want to talk about these consoles coming out
Yeah. You go ahead.
next week. The PS5 is coming out on Thursday, November 12th, and the Xbox Series X is coming out on Tuesday, November 10th. And, you know, the pre-orders were difficult, and I did not get one for either one. But, you know, I would say if you're expecting to be able to walk into a Best Buy or a Walmart or a Target next week and maybe have a chance of getting one, I'd say you're probably not going to. And in fact, Target put something out online saying that if you just walk in, you're not going to get one. You actually have to buy it online for in-store pickup, which is interesting because I'm like, well, maybe that'll be a better way, maybe a better chance at getting one instead of like, you know,
Driving store to store.
Yeah. Because, you know, people, oh my God, you know,
Yeah.
I mean,
Don't call.
Oh,
First
God.
rule of slick deals, don't call.
Yeah. And then, but like even Walmart's, they're not saying they're going to have any in store. They're saying if you didn't have a pre-order and to come and pick it up in store, we're not going to have any. So they're only filling their pre-order, I guess. Now, supposedly, some articles are saying that they might have more stock than that. I mean, who knows? And then, you know, Best Buy is weird because you know you never know with Best Buy because you know they messed up their pre-orders or whatever, and like the trouble with their servers, so that was crazy. And then Amazon. You know, they're not really the go-to for something like this. And yeah, Amazon, because Amazon, when they started doing their pre-orders later in the day for, I think, the Xbox Series X, and it was just weird. And because I got on there and because they said they were still available, but they kind of weren't, but they kind of were. And I'm like, okay, whatever. So here's the thing, people. Everybody, and I'm guilty. Everyone's complaining about what a shit show this has been with this launch. Here's the thing. Every new console generation that's launched has been a shit show.
Yeah.
And we all seem to forget so easily, like, you know, that last time when everything came out, it wasn't hard to get.
Yeah. I remember
it was hard.
Like, $10,000 or $20,000 PS3s.
Oh yeah, well, I can remember the GameCube. People, you know, scalping them for whatever back then, you know, and you call in stores and over and over trying to get whatever you can. And back then they would just, you know, if they had 5, they'll let you buy 5. At least now, a lot of the stores will be like, okay, 1 per person or whatever. Mm-hmm. But you know, it's always a shit show because everybody wants the new stuff.
Right.
And you know, that's funny too, because I just said that, you know, maybe not a lot of people are going to go for the new generation because it's so close to the other one. But, you know, I could be completely off this time because, you know, people are just crazy for it anyway.
Factors.
Oh, God.
Especially even, you know, COVID playing into it.
I can remember,
That too much, but.
I think it was GameStop said that they were going to have another round of pre-orders if you stopped in the store.
Yeah.
And, you know, I had to go to I had like a doctor's appointment that morning. And on the way back on 59, I was like, oh, you know, there's a GameStop here, you know, maybe I'll stop and see if I can walk in and get one. Like an idiot. In a park, and I'm walking up and there's a line.
No.
You know? And they're all looking at me like, look at this motherfucker, you know, like, right. We've been here a while, and you're just gonna
go on in, sir.
Yeah, because the store hadn't even opened up, right? And the guy in the front, you know, just pasty white, you know, and I'm like, dude, I respect you. And he's like, yeah, we've been here since like 1 a.m. I'm like, dude, I'm totally not on that level of excitement for this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I hear you, I hear you, but no. No, you know, if I get one, fine. If I don't, you know, I'll see you after the first of the year.
Yeah.
And I know people, and I really want one. I really want one right now because I skipped on getting the last generation because it was so close to the new one. So I kind of want it now, but you know, and then everyone's like, well, you know, you don't want the first one. You want the second revision because all the bugs are in the first one.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, but I already waited.
Yeah.
You know? I want to be there on the ground from day one.
You want to suffer.
Well,
No.
it's not going to be suffering. I mean, just as long as you don't get the red ring of death or whatever.
Yeah.
By the way,
That's a big deal. That was a huge deal.
Yeah, those things, those Xboxes run so hot. I got Alex during the pandemic. I bought him the black 360 Slim, and that thing runs so hot. Yeah. Like I got to keep the cabinet doors open on that because if I feel the top, and I'm like, dude, like
they cook themselves.
I can only imagine like what that thing's like to that motherboard. Yeah, you know, just
extremely hot. Yeah, any recent console hardware has always run hot.
Did you see? Well, you seen that breakdown of the PS5?
Yeah.
Did you see that heat sink?
Yeah.
Jesus, people are just gonna. You know, people are going to be going through dumpsters, 10 years when those things are going just getting the metal. Yeah. I'm like, that's crazy. That thing was huge. Yeah. I wonder how heavy that thing is.
Yeah. I'll show you the gaming system I have on my desk that I don't ever have time to game with. But I've got a tower cooler in it. But yeah, that's like the PS5 cooling setup is like a pretty decent setup for a gaming PC. So that will definitely help. But there's always a challenge. They want, you want a tiny box that makes no noise, that cools like 150 watts of heat or whatever. It's impossible to do. So,
well, I guess the Xbox has a pretty big fan up top there.
Yeah.
But from what I've heard, it's pretty quiet.
Yeah, I mean a tower setup, like PCs have had that as an higher end cases have been a tower format, and that's a great setup. For heat dissipation. Obviously, like that didn't make as much sense with like a more traditional style of like entertainment cabinet because you didn't have like a taller, shelf space. to fit that shape, device in. But yeah, that's gonna probably help quite a bit.
It's going to be interesting to see too, like how the PS5, how quiet that is.
Yeah.
Because I don't have a Pro, but from what I've heard, that thing's like a jet engine going off, like it's so loud.
Yeah, and that's a pretty big system anyway, right? Like
The
compared
PS5?
to PS3, yeah,
That's
like,
what I've heard. Like everyone
PS5.
was giving the Xbox a whole bunch of shit. By the way, I don't mind the way the new Xbox looks like. I think it looks cool. I don't need a whole bunch of fancy curves. In the end of the day, I don't give a fuck what it looks like.
Yeah.
But a whole bunch of people are giving it shit.
I like boring stuff, to be
Yeah.
honest. So I
But did
prefer the Xbox look.
Did you
but-
see that they're actually making a refrigerator
Oh yeah,
that looks like it?
yeah, I saw.
I thought that was fake, and
Was
then
it
no, they're
iJustine
actually doing
or
it.
something. Somebody had a
Yeah.
clip. Yeah, yeah,
I'm like, hey man,
yeah.
they'll make another like $600 a pop out of it because
Yeah.
people they'll make it limited
And
or
to be honest, that type of like clean minimalist look in like the high end PC world, those are all the top cases. Are like super boring,
Yeah.
sharp edged squares, aluminum
I
finish.
love that. Like with my Nintendo Switch, you can get the different colors or whatever. I'm like, nah, man. I don't know. I
Keep it
just
clean.
Yeah, and maybe it's because I'm older.
Yeah,
that
that plays a part into it.
If
yeah.
I was younger, like a kid, maybe, but and two, it doesn't show the dirt, so
Yeah.
I don't know.
yeah, to each their own. Everybody can
Yeah.
have their fun.
So Eddie, I have a little boy.
Yep.
You have 3, working on 4.
No. Absolutely not.
And our 2 boys, our oldest, are basically the same age.
Yep.
I think he's 6? 6. My little boy's 7, but he's got that birthday in October. And now with Alex, he is finding taking more of an interest in video games and TV shows, and I'm having to find myself saying, I don't know if this is really right for you right now. I kind of feel that it's not, and now you're getting that whole, so-and-so at school is watching it, and they're talking about it, and, I've had to take several streaming apps off of tablets here because I was not being listened to.
Sure.
You didn't realize that, when I'm logged in under my account on YouTube and that, I can see the history here and I'm coming home and busting him. And he's lying to me going, no. And then finally he's like, yeah, it was by mistake. And I'm like, no. 10 videos in a row is not by mistake, mister. And, it's curious because I started thinking about this about a year or two ago when you really started taking an interest in another guy that I follow on YouTube, John Hancock. I don't know if you know who he is.
I don't think so.
He's a big collector out there on the West Coast, and real nice guy. And he's a teacher. I think he's like a first or second grade teacher, something like that. And his wife's a social worker. And they actually had an episode where they talked about like, what kind of games and what they let their kids watch, because their kids were pretty young too. Sure. And it was actually usually I don't tell Mel to come and sit down and watch this stuff with me because she's like, oh God.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I really want you to watch this with me because this is something that I've been thinking about, and now they're talking about it.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Sometimes I worry that I'm being too strict with it. But other times, and this is with movies, this is with games, this is with TV shows, and especially with TV shows, because we got so many streaming options now.
Yeah.
And even like on the Disney app, I kind of wonder or worry a little bit because after they took over 20th Century Fox or the merger or whatever, I think wasn't it Fox? Didn't they merger with them? I think that's who it was. Yeah. And because now a lot of those movies or a lot of
They're
that
gonna be
stuff,
accessible,
and it's still Disney, so I haven't really seen too much of it on there.
Yeah.
But I was just wondering, have you been dealing with that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got a lot of Roku TVs we just happened to pick one up a number of years ago, and that made its way into like our main playroom, and it's super simple and pretty easy to control it. It's easy for kids to operate the remotes or whatever. So anyways, we ended up buying more Roku TVs over time. And that's kind of a nice setup because you have all the TVs that sync the apps, and it's a consistent experience, and it's harder to lose remotes because most of the remotes work across all the TVs, which is nice. But getting back to like the beginning of like watching, kind of kid oriented programming, a lot of it was stuff that we found on YouTube. And there's a lot of great stuff on YouTube. But especially at the time and probably still now, there's a lot of really weird stuff on YouTube and a lot of stuff that will autoplay, starting from a like completely normal educational video, and you get 5 or 10 videos deep and you're watching some weird stuff, weird cartoon stuff.
And it's funny that you say that because, normal YouTube has been a big stickler for me and not watching, but not only what videos are playing, but what ads they have with them, because a lot of times they're not ads meant for kids. They're adult ads. And sometimes, hey man, I mean, what is this? I mean, and I know it's easy to say, well, you have kids YouTube, but at the same time, I just worry that, hey, you have an algorithm that tells me that on my YouTube channel that I played 15 seconds of a fucking Rush song and now I got flagged in less than 2 hours. And you can't write some sort of, algorithm that says, hey, these are kids' videos. And, I thought it was going to change after they had that, was that a COPA or whatever? And I know, like, when I go to upload my videos, I got to say, is this for a kid or not for a kid? But it doesn't seem to make a difference, at least not from what I've seen.
And the one
so far
hang up that we had with our setup, the only downside really to Roku is that for the longest time, and I don't think you can now either, the YouTube Kids app is not accessible on Roku. So you're stuck with full-blown YouTube, which is extremely difficult to control, to manage. And like for the longest time, like past couple of years, it's been like a battle of removing YouTube app and then giving it back and removing it again, because especially our second oldest boy, he is to the point now where he'll sneak a remote into a room where no one's in, and he'll turn on YouTube.
No, not him.
Yeah, you know him well. And he will, he'll bring up YouTube and he'll watch, and it's not crazy stuff. It's like maybe like playthroughs or whatever. But, even some of that stuff, if it's a 15-year-old kid or a 16 or 17 or 18-year-old kid doing a playthrough, the language is generally not okay for a 5-year-old kid. And that's like the kind of the biggest hurdle we're facing right now is the stuff that's kind of like borderline. And we've tried to keep them away really from everything as long as we could. Like tablets, like we had them on Amazon Fire tablets, and the app selection wasn't great, so we moved them over to Android tablets. And we've got streaming stuff, Amazon Prime, which is safe, and Disney, which is safe. But there's a lot of stuff out there that it gets weird quick, and it's you're constantly in that kind of place where you're like, I don't know, this isn't great. Turn that off. Like, there's something better.
Well, it had been a year and me railing on this new YouTube or the regular YouTube, and finally about a month and a half ago, I came home and I was pissed. Well, actually, I take that back. I was at work one weekend and I got on my phone at lunchtime, and all of a sudden, because when you go on there and you watch certain videos, all of a sudden this is what it's throwing at you. Suggesting, and now I'm going, well, what the hell? And I go through, what has been watched, and I'm like, and we had sat down, we had talked, and finally I called Mel and I said, look, I am pissed right now. I'm like, I am done, because I don't want to yell. I don't want to be that guy. I don't, I don't want to lose it every time. But I'm like, I had to tell Mel, I said, look, I do not want him watching this. I want to stress how serious I am about this, that this is no longer a thing. We are taking it off of everything. Because she had also given him like her old phone for him to mess around with. So it was on there. And I said, we got to take that off. We got to take HBO. Because, you know, the thing with like an HBO like Now app, which maybe there's other settings on there. I couldn't see them. But they'll have it when you set it up. You can have like for me and that kind of like how Netflix is.
Sure.
And then, you know, and Alex will have his own, or my son, and then, and that's how Netflix is. But the thing of it is, there's really nothing to stop them from clicking on mine or Mel's,
right?
In both apps, Netflix and HBO. So now they're into that, you know,
right.
and it's like, guys, you got to give us something here. And maybe I don't know, anybody listen to this could write down in the comments letting us know that if there's something there like a password code that would prevent them, because that would be great. But I didn't see it.
Yeah.
At least on the app there for Netflix and HBO. And you know, I don't think they realize, the people who make these, that, you know, that you're not going to be looking over them 24 hours a day to see, you know, making sure that they're not going on here, you know. And by the time, you know, I find out that they're already like 30 minutes in, an hour in, and I'm like, dude, what are you watching here? And he's like, oh, you know, it's okay. The rest of so-and-so at school's been watching. I'm like, well, so-and-so's not you. And, you know, that's, and I, you know, kind of wonder if their parents know.
Yeah.
So
probably, maybe or maybe not. A lot of times now, and it's slightly different because, you know, we still have younger kids too, and they're all watching the same stuff. So like that threshold for what's okay and what's not okay is, you know, further towards the safe side in our house. But most of the time it's just like, turn that off, turn on Disney. Like, or like our youngest, our girl, will get to pick what they watch. And it's like, you know, like Minnie Mouse or whatever, like not what the boys want to watch. But that's like the only safe place. Like, even so, you know, like I said about the Roku stuff, we like the Roku TVs, but even like the Roku channel, you get kind of like some kind of slightly weird stuff that you could find on there, even in like the kids section. Like I said, like playthroughs and just kind of weird stuff that's out on the internet that they picked up.
Yeah, and some of those playthroughs, when you have like a grown guy, and even those toy reviews, and you'll have like an adult guy, and it's like,
that's just a little weird.
And you know, and you hear a lot of, you know, they're making all this money, and that's fine, you know, and it's like, no, look, it may be innocent, but the optic of it doesn't look good. I don't know. It just, and I'll hear it from the other room, and that even a lot of them are still on the kids' YouTube.
Right.
And whatever qualifications you got to have in your video to just be on kids' YouTube. I even then sometimes I question. I'm like, what do you? Because I've walked into a room and been like, what did I tell you? I said no regular YouTube, and he's like, well, this is kids' YouTube, and I looked at it, and I'm like, oh, it is. I'm like, you know,
there's a fine line across like every platform. It's like, with great access becomes great responsibility, because you can get so much.
Was that from Spider-Man?
I don't know. Is that even a real quote? I made a bunch of.
I think it was. The
second part's it's correct, but the first part's not. But anyways, relevant to the conversation, it's there's so much, you know, and like, you know, kids nowadays, like, I'm an old man, right? It's totally, you have access to so much.
Oh God.
You know, even 10 years ago, you could only get in so much trouble because you couldn't get to a lot. And now, you know, like tablets and TVs and computers and phones and everything.
And not to even mention just going on the internet on the browser there.
Oh yeah.
You know, having to hide that.
Yeah.
You know, and the thing that really I struggle with too is, you know, because now our oldest is, you know, he's not a baby anymore. He's, you know, I try to be reasonable with what I allow him to watch and not try to be too restrictive, because, you know, he's not, I don't know. He's not, like I said, he's not a baby anymore, but he's like kind of that in between where I'm like, I don't know that this is what you need to watch. Like the perfect example, the big debate we're having right now is Stranger Things.
Yep.
He wants to watch Stranger Things.
Yep.
And I'm like, but give it a year or two.
Yeah.
And even then, I'm like, I don't know about a year, but I'll say a year just because
I'll buy some time.
Yeah, if that gets me out of the conversation right now and you agree to it, that's fine. And, he's doing everything to sidestep it, like, oh, I'm listening to the soundtrack on Spotify, but it's not the movie, And I'm like, okay. But it's like, and it, he was watching clips of it on there. I'm like, dude, this is
That creeps me out.
Oh.
I'm not huge on like horror stuff. I'll watch it, but like it's a pretty creepy.
Yeah, the remake.
Yeah.
I haven't seen the second one, but the first one, I'm not a big horror guy either. I usually don't get like freaked out.
Yeah.
That one freaked me out.
Yeah.
And he, and he's watching. He's like, oh, when like what's his face got his arm bit off by Pennywise. I'm like, what are you watching? And see this, I told Mel, I said, this is last year he watched Ghostbusters for a month, and then for the next 4 months he was in our room every night. And I'm like, and surprisingly enough, none of this has affected him like that this year. But I'm like, you can't watch it. This isn't okay.
Yeah.
This isn't for you right now.
Yeah.
There's going to be a certain point in time to when this will be for you, but now's not the time.
Yeah.
And boy,
Good luck with that.
and and he'll say, yeah, I get it, okay, yeah. And then like a week later, I'm finding out that and that's why I lost it. It says, because I'm done talking about it. I don't want to yell at you, but more importantly, I just don't want you watching this, because this you don't need to see this stuff at 7 years old.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he'll be like, well, this is the worst. I'm like, it's not the worst. Try growing up in the 80s, okay? When we had the CRT TV, we had to jiggle the knob and bang on the top of it to get the TV to turn on, right?
Yeah.
And
4 channels.
Yeah. And you had cartoons in the morning and the afternoon, and that was it. You were screwed for the rest of the day, with soap operas.
Uh-huh.
I'm like, that's the worst.
Yeah.
Ay.
Kids these days, huh?
I'm telling you. I don't know how you're going to do it with 4.
I'm not. 3 is plenty. We're already outnumbered. That's
well. I'm gonna let me have another sip here. Well, Eddie, I can't even say your goddamn name.
That's all right.
Well, Eddie, I think that's gonna be just about it for right now. I don't know what else we could talk about. You want to talk about politics and the election? Nah, I'm just joking. Everybody else just tuned out. They're like, nope.
Too much.
Well, hopefully the next time we talk, we'll have some sort of president, somebody. I'm not gonna say. I was gonna say something, but I'm like, I don't know who's listening. I don't want to offend anybody.
Yeah. All I'm gonna say is I think it's gonna be an interesting, 3 months or whatever.
I will say this. It's been exciting.
Yeah.
And I got to say that these news networks got to be raking in the dough.
Oh, yeah.
How many people in all these houses have just had, whether it's Fox or CNN or MSNBC on like 18 hours out of the day.
And that those, all these broadcasters are trying to stretch this thing out.
Oh my God!
I mean, this is like Christmas every day for them.
Well, I how many when you showed up and I said, oh, I was watching CNN, I was watching them circle Pennsylvania on the touchscreen TV for like the 80th time, and I watched them because I think I was watching CNN and it was Wolf Blitzer and that I can't think of the other guy's name, but anyway, and I'm like, dude, I watched a little bit last night and tonight, and they are saying the same damn thing. I mean, when they go to like commercial break, I gotta believe they're just like, oh my God,
yeah,
dude, what else are we gonna say?
Yeah,
because nothing's
we gotta keep
changed.
Keep talking.
There's more votes. There's more votes. This is what may happen.
Yeah,
and it's like, okay, now let's see where we are. Well, I mean, we still don't know.
Yeah,
and it's like, dude, I don't know, and they're making a lot more than we are. That's for sure.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be messy. It's gonna be messy next couple of days and a couple of weeks and a couple of months until the dust settles.
It's just going to be interesting to see how much of a circus it is after they call it.
Yeah, I'm waiting for that, and I'm wondering if this kind of like drawn out election finalization process might do something to quell that, because I think like if something would have came out on November 3rd or even the next morning, people were like effing ready to go.
Yeah.
Like certain people might be excited about it.
I'm just ready for everybody to have that point to where everybody just takes a deep breath
Yeah.
and just it's okay.
Yeah.
Let's just let it go.
Yeah.
Just everybody let it go. If your guy wasn't the guy that won, look, the best quarterback's the one that's sitting on the bench. So we all know that, if Trump doesn't win, that eventually a Republican's going to make it because, no president ever makes everyone happy,
Yep.
no matter who it is. And then, after that Republican's done, there's a chance that it's just like Congress, It's always back and forth,
Yep.
And no one ever really wins.
Yeah.
It's just who's going to take a swing at it now and who can we be mad at for the next 4 years?
Yeah. Yeah. Mad at them until we vote them out. Then
Right.
mad at the other guy. So yeah, I'm not big into sports, but politics have kind of been my sports for the past few years. But I'm ready for a break.
I've heard that you've been doing some pacing. I'm not going to say who was telling us this, but I heard that it was tense. That's why I texted you last night. I was like, "Are you breathing? Are you okay?"
Well, while I'm working, I've got my second computer going, and it's just
You got Sean Handy
flipping
going,
through.
right?
Not
Hey,
often. Sometimes.
I just want to say, if you guys tuned out, that's fine.
Yeah, we're still here,
I
but-
totally understand, but yeah.
Yeah, but it's exciting. I don't know. I guess it's my version of sports. 'Cause
I'm
not
really
big into
surprised how
sports,
close it is.
but- Yeah, and we'll see how it plays out. But yeah, I mean, people disagree.
And the thing was, and I guess I wasn't going to get too deep into this, but fuck it, why not? I think a lot of people misunderstood, like after Trump was elected, that like with all of his shenanigans that he does, that like people like that didn't vote for him or that weren't supporters of him were going to be like, well, all these people that voted for him are going to see now how he really is.
Yeah.
And over these 4 years, I think people on the left were a little bit in the dark as far as their thinking because I think they were all under the impression that see now
Right.
you see and now you understand. But what they didn't understand is they already seen enough of that before he got elected. They already knew what he was about, and they're fine with that.
Yeah.
The people that voted for him were all in.
Yeah.
And they're not going back.
Yeah.
In which is probably true on the left side too.
Yeah.
Because those people, everyone likes to think that they're the voice of reason, but it's like, well, maybe not. Sometimes you're not.
Yeah, on both extremes, I think you have, a pretty aggressive viewpoint, I guess you could say, or focused viewpoint that's not quite open for, change or variation. Like it's kind of like you said, all in. Once people are all in, it's very difficult to back out of that.
Yeah.
Because not only are you all in personally, but a lot of times you're all in and people around you know where you stand, and it's kind of like once you're invested in it, it becomes more and more difficult to back out of that without looking like you lost the game. Like in politics, I think it's become kind of that same idea to a lot of people.
Well, I always like the go-to when somebody doesn't want to argue with you, but they're disagreeing with you. It's like, well, they're both a bad choice. It's just horrible that this is the choice that we got. When they're really saying, nah, I don't want to argue with you right now, but my guy's the right choice.
Yeah, right. They're both, but my guy is slightly better. But yeah,
I don't know. I just want a president that no matter what they think personally about certain groups of people, that don't throw gasoline on the fire of what's going on in this country. I just want somebody to be the voice of reason and calming. And look, everybody knows that Biden can say whatever he wants or whatever. And do I believe it? I don't believe anything any fucking politician says. I don't believe it. I think they're all lying. But at least if you're gonna lie, do it for some good
Right.
here.
Do
you
it in
know?
a calming
And
way.
That's the biggest thing that worried me about Trump, is that he never. It's like, look, man, places are on fire. These people, stuff's going on here, and you can blame certain groups for acting inappropriately or whatever. But what we need right now is someone to not go out there and throw the gasoline on the fire. Be the voice of reason.
Yep.
Whether or not the people listen or not,
Sure.
just don't make it worse. You know, and I don't know. I don't know that he gets it, but I will tell you one thing, and I've said this, and this, and of course they're not going to do this, but I definitely think that going forward we need to have an age restriction on when guys can run. Yeah. 78, and I think, how old's Trump?
He's close.
He's in his 70s too. Look, I know what I feel like at 42, and what my mind is here, how it likes to wander and stuff, and how I feel. And I can imagine, but these guys, look at what Barack Obama looked like before he went in and after, and George W. Yeah. It's
heavy.
It's a big deal. And plus, look, these guys aren't speaking for me because they're not in my generation.
Yeah.
They're my dad's generation. They're a generation off. And I got to tell you, a lot of people in that generation do not see eye to eye with a lot of my stuff. Now, you may call me a progressive a little bit, but it's just like, I'm younger. I want somebody more in tune. Like, if you could get somebody like in the early 50s, enough to where it's kind of straddling, maybe both generations of voter ages there, kind of.
Yeah.
I
think there's an overall issue with having such senior leadership. I guess
if Biden wins, he's 78. If he runs again as an incumbent, he's going to be 82. If he wins, 86. That's 4 years away from 90. Yeah. Why would you? Here's the thing, and we're going to wrap this up pretty soon here. But here's the thing: you have all this time in public service. You were the vice president for 8 years. Now you're 74 or 78 years old. Why the hell would you want to do this?
Yeah.
Why would you want to do this?
Yeah.
Dude, I'm 42, and after 12 hours at work, I just want to sit on the couch.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine. You know what I'm saying? Why would you want to do this? I mean, what's driving you anymore? I mean,
yeah.
I mean, for the presidency, but still.
Yeah, I think you need some younger people, and I think you get that. It seems like everywhere other than the presidency, at least recently.
But there has been people like, who was it? Was it Ron Paul when he ran for president 4 years ago? And I was surprised. I thought for sure that he was going to be like the new guy for the Republicans. And then the thing that really surprised everybody is that he stopped. He gave up being in Congress, which shocked everybody. But I thought for sure, like, he was going to be the guy that was going to take it. He was going to be the Republican Barack Obama.
Yeah, there's been some people that were close. Pete Buttigieg is a young guy. You look at like Marco Rubio, the Republican side. I mean, there's been younger guys, and I feel like, their youth, I guess you could say, has been a positive when you look at them in comparison. But they didn't have it overall to get where they needed to be. But I think it would be a good thing for us to get someone a little fresher in there.
Someone a little fresher, someone, like I said, closer to our generation. Because, when it comes to Trump, and I'll say it, I didn't vote for him. And I don't even get to him as what his policies. I don't make it that far because I can't get past the man himself.
Yep.
Because, and I you can call me Democrat, but, when Barack was running against John McCain, John McCain wasn't my guy. But if he would have won, seeing him as the president, yeah, okay, I see that.
Yep.
Same thing, Mitt Romney. Mitt Romney, not my guy. But if he would have won the election, yeah, okay.
Yeah, you can say they're presidential.
Right. I'm not worried about like if the world starts on fire,
Yeah. If COVID
they're-
hits or something.
they're going to be like, well, that's fake news. Is the Capitol buildings in the background on fire?
Yeah.
But it just surprises me. Like I wish I could like put somebody else's brain that really likes him in, so I could really understand. Because people have told me, but I just don't get it. It's from like when he talks and like what he does, and because I remember when he got voted in, and I remember the next day I said, well, okay. I'm like, well, let's see.
Right,
Maybe I'm just missing something here. This guy's got millions of dollars, through his businesses and stuff. I'm like, maybe this guy's legit. I'm just, and all that stuff was just what he was doing during the campaign. And then he had that first press conference. And it went cuckoo cuckoo like right off the bat, and I'm like, what? And that's the thing. There was two realizations that I came to. I'm like, I can't believe this guy is president. And then the second one came a couple days later when I'm like, dude, like that many people were like, yeah, that's my guy. What he just said, what he's saying, that's my dude. And it surprised the shit on me, and evidently I was a bit naive because I thought when Brock was in, I said, dude, we turned a corner here as a people, as a nation, and I was so wrong.
Yeah.
I was so wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, we bounced hard.
Yeah, we did. I'm like, geez, talk about the rebound girl being a whore, right?
Yeah, that was
Good Lord.
It's wild. It's better than TV. What's happened in politics, but I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. Hey, listen. Kudos to Melania for having sex with that guy. She's the real hero here. Because people will say, hey, she's in it for the money and all this. I'm like, yeah, maybe, but she's still got to have sex with that guy. That's no small feat.
What do you think happens if Trump starts getting in trouble?
What do you mean? Like, nothing's going to happen.
Well, I'm just saying, he loses the spotlight, right? You already see.
Are you talking about like everything that came out in investigations, or?
Yeah. I'm saying. I know there's a New York investigation into like fraud regarding his real estate loans and all kinds of stuff. Who knows what happens with that? I'm not saying he's going to go to jail or anything, but I wonder if she becomes less interested in him over time as this spotlight fades, and perhaps the payoff.
I don't really know what kind of
there's
marriage
much.
they have.
I don't know. I don't know. Obviously, it's all love. Obviously,
it is,
but
it sure is.
It'll be interesting to see. I think you already are starting to see the Republican Party slowly step away.
Oh yeah. Well, I will say the one thing, and this just shows politics to the ugly side of it. Like, I was super surprised when he became president, like how fast all them
Everybody got in line.
Everybody.
I
was like,
this is how it works.
Dude. I was like, dude, these guys are going to stick it in his ass. And they were like, Mr. President, we all love you. Come on in here. We'll service you. Well, we got to use two hands because it's so big, right, Mr. President? It's like, oh my God, you guys are crazy.
That's wild.
Yeah. And I'm not talking about like the peons in the Senate. I'm talking like the heavy hitters.
Yeah.
Like when Mitt Romney, what he did to Mitt Romney, I'm like, why did you have to do that?
Yeah.
Ted
Cruz. Ted Cruz is the biggest one to me.
Oh my God.
Like, they got in such a.
Yes. And they all ate it when he took over. I was like, what does he have on you guys? Really, maybe.
He has the base, and he had it until, or allegedly until recently. And,
dude, he's old school New Yorker, man. All these people were kind of surprised, but, this dude was running the presidency like he probably ran his business.
Yeah.
And you're a real estate mogul out in New York City. This dude's not playing fair. And look, all he is Washington is run by special interest group. And he talks about, well, I don't take any money from special interest. Well, that's because you are special interest.
Yeah. Right.
You're the guy that paid guys. And and the funny thing is too, is that a lot of people forget that him being Republican is only recently.
Oh, yeah.
That he was a Democrat for years and
Yeah.
years and years.
Yeah.
Now, how much of that is just, whichever way the wind blows
Yep.
helps me out the greatest? Because, he's a businessman, and he even said it, hey, I've given to Democrats as much as I've given to Republicans because, you got to grease the wheels. You got to pay to play, brother. All right, man. That's it. That's
Perfect.
it. We're done.
Let's give it a proper send off, and then you can cut that whole 15 minutes out.
No, man, there's some good stuff in there.
All right.
I might down in the description below, I might say, hey, an hour you might want to cut out,
Yeah.
So as I spit all over the mic here.
Yeah.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to end it on that. I hope you stuck around to the end, and if not, I don't blame you. Until next time, we will see you later. Good night and goodbye.
Good night.
Would you say I turned into all the things you love to hate? And all my weight comes crashing through the rotten beams and window